And so I see that the knife is coming down on me. And so he's starting to bring his forearm down on me. And so I start to kick his forearm to block the knife from coming down on me.
Hey, former CI officer Jason Hanson here. And today I'm doing a kind of a unique video, not something I do all the time. And I'm interviewing something. I'm interviewing someone. The reason I'm interviewing someone is a friend reached out to me and said, hey, you have to meet Terra. Do you know about Dirty John? I had no idea what Dirty John was. We're going to ask her that right here in a moment. But I do a tremendous amount of self-defense training. I've trained thousands of people over the years in self-defense training, and it's my mission to keep people safer. And so this friend that reached out to me said, hey, Terra is a survivor, and as someone who teaches self-defense, you absolutely want to interview her. So right now, I've got Terra Newell. Did I say it right? Now I almost screwed it up. How do I say your last name, Terra?
Terra Newell. You said it right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I've got Terra Newell on here today. And Terra, I want to thank you for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
So because I don't know the full story, but our mutual friend introduced us when he said, hey, Jason, do you know what Dirty John was? And I said, I have no idea what Dirty John is. So tell me, when he said that, what is he referring to?
So Dirty John was essentially my attacker, who was a serial con artist who preyed on my mom and so many women, but he ended up coming after me and attacking me with a knife.
Okay. So was it I believe it's been made into a documentary, like a Netflix documentary or a show or something?
Yeah, so it's been made into several documentaries, a Netflix show, a Bravo. Well, it was originally on Bravo, then got bought out by Netflix, and then got distributed on all the Netflix platforms. So many people got to see it then. And then also the podcast has over 100 million listens now.
Wow, that's awesome. That's great.
Thank you. Well, I don't have anything to do with that money. It's just
in due time.
Yeah, it's just like, it's crazy how many people have heard about my story and heard about Dirty John, because he was this serial con artist, and it's really become a word that people use to describe like a guy that they dated that is bad or something. And like, I literally watch TV and they'll use, oh, yeah, I was with a Dirty John last night, or, oh, you're dating a Dirty John. So it's like a word that gets thrown around now too.
Okay. So when did this, you said your mom dated him. When did this take place? Like, when did your mom first meet Dirty John?
She met him in 2014.
Okay. And when they're doing these documentaries or well, I guess, what is it? Is it like a documentary true crime series where you're kind of being interviewed throughout it? Or was it more of a television show? Like, what do they do on Bravo and Netflix?
So on Bravo, that was the scripted series. And that was Connie Britton, who played my mom. And then Eric Bana, that played my stepdad. And then Julia Gardner from Ozark, she played me.
Okay. All right. And so let's go back to 2014. How did your mom meet this guy who's a con artist? I mean, are they meeting online? Like, what's the story behind that?
She met him on a dating website called Our Time for seniors.
Oh, so I haven't heard of that one. Not that I've been on a dating website for years. I think Match.com is probably the only one I'm familiar with. So, okay. So they meet on online, and how soon are they, I guess, meeting in person, dating? Like, how quickly do things progress between your mother and this guy?
I'm not sure how long they were talking, but I don't think it was for that long, maybe a few weeks, I'm assuming. Okay. And just knowing my mom, like, she's more likely to meet up with someone in person right away, where I recommend someone might vet them out for a little bit, especially meeting someone online. But she doesn't have too much knowledge about that. She's in her 50s, over 50s at this time, and she's meeting this guy, and he's claiming to be a doctor, anesthesiologist. He's claiming to be this perfect guy. And then he comes to her apartment because she's old-fashioned. And so that's like what she's used to, is someone coming to her apartment to come pick her up for the date. He goes there, he picks her up for the date, and they walk over to Houston's, which is this restaurant across the street. And they have an amazing date. They go back to her apartment, and my mom is the type of person to think, oh, like he's going to come back to my apartment for like tea, and it's only going to be tea. And so he goes back to her apartment with her, and he lays on her bed, and she says, no, this makes me uncomfortable, and draws a boundary. He gets angry at her and then leaves.
And this was the first date.
Yes.
So on the first date, some guy is, for lack of a better word, creepy enough, weird enough to be like, hey, I'm going to lie on your bed and think it's okay. All right.
Yeah.
So he leaves, but obviously there's more to the story, meaning she doesn't say, okay, this guy's a weirdo, I'm going to never talk to him again. What happens after that?
So he calls her like a couple days later. He apologizes for everything, and she thinks that that's so nice that he calls and he like is apologizing. So she gives him another chance and then gets into this whirlwind romance with him.
And when's the first time that you meet this guy?
I met him 2 months into the relationship.
Okay. And what was your initial impression the very first time you meet this guy? Like, where do you meet him? Is it a restaurant? Is it your mom's house? And how does that go?
So I'm coming down from Las Vegas because I'm living in Vegas at the time. And I'm driving down because my mom is moving out of her apartment with my sister and into a place on Balboa Island in Newport Beach. And my sister's having issues with him. So that's why my mom's moving out of the apartment, is because there's already issues with him. But my sister, I love her, but she has an opinion about everything. And so you couldn't take what my sister was saying necessarily like with clarity, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so you couldn't listen to her and hear what she was saying. Like, she was just like, okay, like Jacqueline is having a fit right now about him. She doesn't like a lot of my boyfriends, or hasn't liked a lot of my boyfriends. So I'm going to try to draw boundaries with her, and I'm going to get a new place so that I can have my relationship and have my time with him, which honestly, like, I agree with. Just Jacqueline is super intuitive and does pick up on things. And I met this guy. He was putting the mattress on top of the van, and I came down with my boyfriend at the time, and he ran out, but my boyfriend at the time had a cast on, and he was trying to help him get the mattress on top of the car. And John was just like, oh no, like, I don't need your help. Like, I could do this by myself. And not wanting to really engage. And we kind of just assumed it was him because there was a van. It had my mom's company's name on it. And so I was like, okay, that's the guy. And so he didn't really introduce himself. And then my mom came down and my mom introduced us to him. And it was just like a short hello because we were also moving. So we didn't assume anything of like the short hellos or anything. We pack up my mom's house. We get her over to her new place. We unload all the stuff. We're finished packing in a sense, or get to the place where we're done packing for the day. And I'm trying to sit down with him, have margaritas with my friends, cook tacos. And he isn't really engaging, but he's really happy to have drink. Like, he's happy about that. And he's enjoying his drink, and he's just like, but he doesn't want to engage in conversation with me. Like, I'll ask him questions like, oh, what does your daughter do? Well, he didn't say the right thing, but he was like, oh, she's in the army, or he had 2 daughters, but he just didn't want to engage with me. And then I was like, okay, so whatever. And then the next day we went to California Pizza Kitchen, and he gets excited talking about medical stuff. And I have a medical problem that I'm dealing with. And he tells me that it could be an ovarian cyst. It was not an ovarian cyst, but it actually helped me get the answers that I needed, because I went to the OBGYN, and that doctor actually did a lot of work that was not in her specialties for me. And it's just amazing when doctors are like that. But anyways, back to the story.
So I assume then that he wasn't any kind of real doctor, meaning he had no medical degree or anything, right?
So we didn't know this at that time, but
Right.
he really just had his nursing certificate.
Okay.
And he wasn't a practicing nurse at the time because he had gotten in trouble for selling drugs and like stealing from the hospitals and stuff. And he got his ex-wife also like was in investigation with this, and he got in trouble and he couldn't practice anywhere.
So did your mom eventually end up marrying him?
She did. After I actually got into a fight with him, I was asking her why he was using her cars, why he was living there in a sense, why his stuff was around, because I thought he wasn't moving in.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like I was snooping or anything. I just had opened the closet of the room that we were staying in, and there was a box, and all his stuff was in there. And his nursing certificate was right on the box.
Mhm.
And I don't have a medical background, so I don't know that a nursing certificate may mean that he's just a nurse. I thought, oh, okay, maybe he's a nurse as well.
Sure.
So I didn't put anything to that, but for him, that was a red flag, and that was something alarming because he thought I was snooping when I wasn't.
So how long did your mother and him date before they ended up getting married?
2 months. So it was like right around like 2.5 months.
Okay, so it was very, very quickly.
Yes.
And then how long, or I guess how did your mother, how long were they married before he discovered that she had married someone who was clearly not what he told her she was? How long was it until she realized he was a con man?
I want to say probably 6 months in, around 6 months.
And what were all the pieces of the puzzle that she put together where she's, how did she start discovering like, hey, there's no question whatsoever. This guy's been lying to me. He's not a doctor. He's not an anesthesiologist. Like, what were all the things that happened where she figured that out?
Well, so first he isolated my sister and I. And so we weren't buzzing in my mom's ear anymore. And then he turned us as these girls that just wanted her money and didn't want her love or anything.
Jeez.
Like we were monsters in his eyes, and like he was making us out to be that.
Hmm.
And we were fighting with my mom, so it wasn't hard to be like, oh, I treat you so well. Like these girls treat you horrible. Like you need to just let them go in a sense. And she did to a certain extent. She still wanted relationships with us, but she wasn't talking to us every day like she used to. And she was really losing that connection. And then my other siblings started to see him for who he was. And he was trying to get involved in my mom's business and know the books and everything. He was also saying stuff that was inappropriate to my niece about teaching her about the birds and the bees when he had only known her for how long? And that's not his job to tell her, but he would also
Right.
show her twerking videos. And to me, that's like a grooming behavior.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of weird stuff that was coming up. And then he received a letter from jail one day. And so my family and I actually didn't hire the private investigator, but my brothers and sisters did.
Okay.
And so they started to find out lots of stuff about John, that he had different social security numbers that he would use, that he would con lots of other women, that he had so many legal cases against other women, against other people, and that other lawyers sometimes were scared of him because he would get lawyers disbarred if they didn't take his case, or if they pissed him off in any way, he would straight get lawyers disbarred because he did go to law school. He just didn't graduate. He has medical knowledge. He has all of that. So he is really intelligent in those aspects.
Hmm.
But he's just this serial con artist that we're finding out. And then now all this information's coming out. And then my family brings it to my mom. And then it kind of opens her eyes.
So yeah, what was that like? I mean, who brought it to your mother? Was it you? Was it one of your siblings? I mean, who said, hey, here's all this proof? And how did she first take it when, she saw these horrible things about the man who she was married to?
So my brothers and sisters, so it was, I believe, Nicole and my sister Jacqueline that showed her this stuff. Nicole and her husband, Scotty, but they were like the main people that hired the private investigator and that kind of got her out of the first situation. Is they showed her all that. And then luckily she just had a kind of plan to have someone lease the apartment that she was having, or the house that she had. And my dad actually helped her out with that, found one of his friends to rent the place. And so she just had to like end it with a psychopath and then escape him. But the first
Well, how did that go? I mean, when she was convinced that he was a psycho, as you said, I mean, how did that go when she tried to end it? I mean, did he go nuts on her then? Did he try and attack her? Did he try and keep her from leaving? I mean, what was that whole situation?
So I know there was a lot of threats here and there about my sister and I, but then I think the first time she left him, he was trying to get her back.
Okay.
Like he was like, oh, don't leave me. He was more upset that she was leaving him. And then it turns into like where he threatens her and then he like is kind to her. And then my mom's already living at my sister's. So he is like, okay, I could prove that all these John Meehan's are not me. Deborah, I just want to talk. I just want to talk and meet up in person. So she started talking to him and meeting up with him in person. And he actually took her to a lawyer that explained to my mom that all these John Meehan's that we looked up were not true when it was false. But, you know, if a lawyer tells you something, you might believe that lawyer. And so she went back to him. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't blame her.
And so how long was she with him this next time? And what was the straw that broke the camel's back when she finally left him for good?
So she left him and probably wasn't with him for like a couple months and then got back together with him. And from the day she left him to the next day she left him was exactly a year.
Okay.
So she wasn't with him for the full year. Like she left him probably like we were dealing with him March, April, May, June, July, August. So like 5 months after she left him, like we were dealing with him with just threats and everything. Like time with a psychopath in a toxic relationship is kind of difficult because sometimes you're with them, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're half there in it, and then other times you're just like completely out of it. And you being completely out of it is like your body's still there, but your brain and you're really not there, emotionally.
So once she finally left him and got up the courage and said, "Hey, this is for good," how long before he attacked you, and how did that happen? Like, what was the situation of when he attacked you? Meaning, why were you near him, or why was he near you? How did that whole thing play out?
So when she left him the second time, she was planning to leave him. She also hired a private investigator herself, a different one, to look into things. And she had people telling her how to plan the leave. But then one day she got into a fight with him and she left abruptly, like taking like one shoe. And then he called the cops on her saying that she hit him. But she was already in Vegas because they had a house in Vegas and then an apartment in Irvine. And so she was already in Vegas cleaning out the house of her stuff and filming it all for legal purposes. And so that case against her hitting him didn't go anywhere because they called her and realized she was in a completely different state. And then he ended up, so the lease on the Irvine apartment kind of just like ended, or my mom was able to get out of it or something, but it was easy to get out of that one. But then John ended up moving to the Vegas house and was squatting the Vegas house and not leaving it. So my mom just let him stay there. She didn't want any conflict. And then during this time, he was coming to California on and off. He was stalking my mom and my family. He lit my mom's car on fire, and the police had a report about that. And then he also drove his car into a gate, like a gated community, into like one of those gates, and he abandoned the car and it was in my mom's name. So my mom had to pick up that car. And then they had a dog together. And because he was coming to California to stalk us, the dog would always escape. And because Vegas is so hot, like the dog would be in this heat.
Mhm.
And so the dog would always end up in the pound. And so finally we gave him a few days to try to get the dog and whatnot. But then he was going down this downward spiral, saying like he didn't want the dog and whatnot. So my mom went to pick up the dog, and then I ended up having the dog that was his dog. And then that's when 5 months after all of this was happening, and he ended up coming after me, and the parking garage is like open at the top.
So how do you, just so for everybody watching and listening, is where's this parking garage at? I mean, are we talking about a parking garage in an apartment, or are you shopping, or where's the kind of the whole scenario laid out?
So I'm leaving work, and I actually leave work early, which is an important factor because he made a fake call to get his dogs groomed, but they were a no-show. So I actually left work early. And I was trying to get to the Jason Aldean concert that night. So I was also preoccupied by that. So my mind wasn't in like the normal state it is in. Like it wasn't in hypervigilant or
Sure.
anything. It was just like zeroed in, gotta get to the concert, gotta get home, get ready in 15 minutes, like get there. And I drive home. The gate is also broken. I park in my parking spot, and my dog is actually barking at this guy, and he's fiddling with a tire iron. And I look over, and I think that the guy's just homeless. And I park in my spot. I tell my dog to knock it off. He's a good dog. He stops barking. And I get out of my car, I grab my dog, and then I walk by my license plate, and it's a apartment parking spot, and it's open space. So there's also like apartments that can see the parking lot.
Hmm.
And he grabs me by the waist, looks me in the eyes, and says, "Do you remember me?" I immediately dropped my dog's leash so that my dog could try to run away. And I tried to run away from this guy. I was unable to run away from the guy, and he kept like grabbing me. He kept trying to cover my mouth. When he would try to cover my mouth, I would bite him as hard as I could, and then he couldn't cover my mouth at all. And then so at this point he started to get angry,
And do
and
you know that it's him? I mean, or does he look totally unrecognizable? I mean, does he look homeless, like he's disheveled, or the second he grabs you, do you know it's John?
so like I look him directly in his eyes, and he says, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like I don't respond because that would mean I would have to waste air and I would have to waste energy. And so I do know it's him, and that's why I try to run away from him, because I know that this guy is here to kill me. This guy has been sending threats to our family. This guy has been stalking us. Like this guy isn't here just to take me out to lunch.
Hmm.
So I knew he was there to harm me. And that's when I knew I had to run away, or I had to fight back. But unfortunately, I couldn't run away. So I had to fight back.
So he's got you grabbed around the waist. He's trying to cover your mouth. You've been biting him. What happens next?
So he starts to, what I think is punch me. But I actually bring up my purse to protect my heart, and my arm is also over like major vital organs and stuff. And so what I think he is punching me, he's actually stabbing me. And he's not getting me in my heart because I'm blocking my heart from getting stabbed. And he stabs me in my forearm. And then I think he actually did get me like once in the chest, but it was very minimal because I think he got me through my purse. And so I just like tried to keep like fighting him off me. And I was able to slip away in a sense where I actually fell on my back, and my shoulder hit like first.
Hmm.
And then I was on the ground And I was also wearing rain boots, which is really great in this case. I was wearing rain boots too. And so at this point, he's on his knees and he had the knife in a Del Taco bag before, and now it's out of the Del Taco bag. And so I see that the knife is coming down on me. And so he's starting to bring his forearm down on me. And so I start to kick his forearm to block the knife from coming down on me.
So he's trying to crawl on top of you while you're laying on your back.
So he's on his knees and I'm like laying down on the floor, but I'm
Okay.
also bringing my legs up to like do bicycle kicks.
Yep.
And so I'm like maneuvering in that way. And then I'm using like my femur muscles. So
And what kind of knife does he have? Is it a
it's a
big
steak
knife or a, sorry?
It's a steak knife.
Steak knife. Okay. All right.
Uh-huh. And it's actually from like my mom in his kitchen. So he was trying to stab me, and it was like probably about like 6 inches long too. So it was like a bigger steak knife, you know?
Yeah. So it's a big knife.
Yeah. So he was doing that, and then I was just blocking the kick, or I was kicking his forearms as he was like coming down. And then my dog is actually attacking his ankles at the same time. And so with that dual effort, I was actually to kick the knife out of his hand, and it landed on my right hand side in the ice pick position.
Mm-hmm.
So I pick it up and I start just wailing on him. And I couldn't remember this actually until like a week ago, but thought I was stabbing him in the front of the chest, but I was actually overthrowing it and stabbing him in the back of his shoulders. And then as I was doing this, I stabbed him 11 times in the back of his shoulders. And then he gasped. So I like held his body up, and then I held his head so that his head wouldn't bite me because I watch a lot of Walking Dead. And so I held his head, and then I actually gave thought to the last ones because I didn't want him to get up. I didn't want him to get up and Freddy Cougar me. And so I did the last one to the forehead, or the second to last one to the forehead, and then the last one was into the eye, which is the softest point of entry to the brain. And so I know that one would have made him brain dead even if he was still alive technically. And then I pushed his body off of mine, I scooted away, and then I tossed the knife away from him so that he couldn't grab it just in case. And then I started to assess the situation. I saw that I had a 1-inch stab wound in my forearm. So I started applying pressure to that to slow down the bleeding. And then at this point, people started coming up.
And so is he saying anything when you're defending yourself and stabbing him, or any words coming out of his mouth?
Just a gasp.
Okay. And when I assume, or, you're not supposed to assume, that when you finally give him the finishing blow, when you're finally able to get him on top of you, is he's not moving after that? He's not coming after you? He's not doing anything at all?
No, he's just laying there. I honestly thought he was dead.
And so that was going to be my next question is, how long did he survive, or did he totally survive? What happened to him?
So the lady started coming up, and then she grabbed my dog because the dog was eating the Del Taco that was in the bag, and I thought that it could be poison. So that's what I asked her to do. And then this other guy came up. He asked me if I was okay, blah, blah, blah. And then he gave me a sweater to put over my wound to apply pressure to it. And then this other girl, Skylar, got there. And she was in lifeguard training, and she told me that she's trained for this type of situation, started asking me questions. What's my name? When's my birthday? To start to get me out of shock.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other guy went over to John and started to give him CPR. And I said, don't do that. He'll try to kill you. He tried to kill me. And I just kept repeating myself over and over again. I said, that is my stepdad. He tried to kill me. That is my stepdad. He tried to kill me, so that people would know the circumstance, and so that I wasn't giving too much information, but I was just giving enough to know so people would know not to go to him. But he didn't listen to me. And so I started to freak out. And then the girl walked me down the hill because I figured I couldn't have any control over that, and I needed to just get away from him for my own safety again. So then all the ambulance started coming up, and I started making phone calls to my mom to let her know that it happened, and also to my ex-boyfriend. And then the police obviously took my phone and whatnot,
Mhm.
but they were able to revive him. And but he
Is
was
he
still
still alive today?
no, he was brain dead though, because
Right,
the
right, okay.
last one, so he didn't have brain function, but they were able to revive him to get a pulse, but he was just a vegetable.
And so how
So
long did they keep him alive? How long did they keep him on machines before they finally pulled the plug?
probably like 3 days, because my mom had his life rights. My mom was still legally married to him. So we had my mom sign that over to his sisters because we thought that that was more appropriate. And I don't think that my mom should have had to have that decision to live with. So he got pulled the plug. They took photos of him and stuff too, so that they could show me that he was actually dead.
And how about the police when they showed up? How, what did they ask you? How helpful were they to you? What was that whole situation like?
Well, I think the police were mad at me for making phone calls because that kind of isn't helpful to the case. And they just told me, like, no, you can't do that. No, I need your phone. And I eventually hand them my phone. And I asked them if I could make one more call beforehand because I was supposed to meet my friend. My friend was coming there to go with me to the Jason Aldean concert. So I had to tell her, in my mind, I thought I would be running late. And they were like, "No, you can't do that. We'll let you know, or like, we'll tell her for you." And so I was like, "Okay, I have no control over that." And then I was like, "Okay, I have a 1-inch stab wound in my arm." So then the paramedics started to help me with that. And I think I told them like I was good at first. Like, no, I'm good. I have this 1-inch stab wound in my arm, but I'm good. I don't need help. But they wrapped it up, and then they started to put me on the ambulance, and I started yelling at them because my dog was over there, and my dog is a ESA dog. And so I was like, I need my dog to go with me
Mhm.
because my dog went with me to the doctors as it was already. My dog went with me to get blood drawn all the time. So I needed my dog there. And I told them that I would sue them if they didn't let me have my dog, which I actually could. And so they went and they grabbed my dog from me, and then I let them do whatever to me. And it was all great. And then we all got along. And they actually played country music for me on the way because I asked them, I was like, "Do you think I'll be able to make it to the concert in time? Do you know how long this might take?" And they're like, "I don't think you're going to be able to make it to that concert." And when they told me that, I was just so sad. And that's what I was really sad about, was not making it to the concert because when you're in that shock, your
Mhm.
mind goes to different places. Like, you can't accept the reality that you're in right now until your brain is allowed to settle down and process it. And your body might have to prepare for the next attack too. And so your brain isn't allowed to process it yet. So I go to the hospital, I'm waiting in the hall, and then I get into a room, and then the police start to question me over and over again. Well, they're more so like interrogating me. And then they're taking pictures of all my wounds, well, what they thought was all my wounds. And they just kept asking me the same questions over and over again. I kept repeating my answers over and over again, the same answers. But, there's always like sometimes you'll remember like certain things or whatnot, and you'll add things to the story. So I think that's what they were hoping for, was for me to add more things to the story. And then finally, with all my questions, and then there was a lot of 911 calls as well, because people were able to see my attack from their balconies. And so that kind of helped cleared me
Mhm.
for when they needed to release me. And so the attack happened around like 5:25 p.m. And then I was able to see my family members around 11 p.m. But the cops told me that my mom went to be with her husband when that was actually not true. They asked her to go identify him because she had to go identify a John Doe.
Hmm.
And so they told me that, and then I was able to see my sister Nicole because my other sister was arguing with the cops because she was mad that she wasn't able to see me for hours and that
Hmm.
I was having to go through this alone. And my sister told me that my mom went to be with John to go identify him, not that she wanted to go be with him. She wanted to be here with me. And so it was really nice to see her. And then I started to see everyone. And I had my dog with me too, which was nice. And it just started to like, people started to come in. And then they finally gave me my stitches. Well, I had to wait like for a couple hours with like an open gash in my arm before like anyone saw me because they had to question me. But then when I was able to see the nurse, I wanted my mom to be there, so I had to wait even longer for her just because I've never gotten stitches before. So this was something like I wanted my mom there. And so I just waited even longer, and then I was changing out of my clothes, and then they realized that I have a stab wound in my chest. So someone comes, take a picture of that, document that, and then they send me to a different hospital because of where the wound is. They need me to go to the trauma unit. And so when I get to the trauma unit, that's actually when I get re-traumatized because they put me into a room. There's probably around like at least 8 people around me. They're poking me, they're like putting needles in me, they're finger pricking me, they're touching me everywhere. Like my vagina, my boobs, everything. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, yelling for my mom, seeing her on the other end, and I can't get to her because they're just holding me down, poking me and hurting me all over again. And then I finally get to a room and get settled, but it's just like a secondary trauma because I don't have consent to like what they're doing to me.
So during the first 2 weeks, I'm sure there was a wide range emotions or of emotions, for lack of a better word. So what were you going through those first 2 weeks?
I went into shock and then I went into appease mode where I wanted everyone to think I was okay because I could see that it was affecting everyone else so much. And so I wanted everyone to be like, okay, Tara's okay. She's dealing with this okay. She doesn't, we don't have to worry about her. And then I also would go into fits of rage, just being triggered by certain things. Like my dog was barking in my attacks, so unfortunately my dog barking would trigger me. And I would go into these fits of rage where I would self-harm and I would like just hit my head over and over again because I didn't know what to do. And I like kept going into fight mode and I didn't know how to process that in my body.
So you hear stories where a woman is being attacked, she's fallen on the ground and she freezes, she gives up, she plays an easy victim. So why do you think you fought back? Why do you think you didn't freeze? Why do you think you're a survivor and that you have this, even though it's a horrible thing that happened to you, you have this great story to tell to other people of, hey, I made it.
Well, I think that with me, if it was someone that was my personal abuser, I don't think I would have been able to fight back just because I would have had that appease response or I would have had that freeze response. I wouldn't have that fight response. But because it's my mom, someone that I care about, and I'm watching him hurt her, I have that reactiveness and I have that fight mode in me. And so I'm leaning into my fight mode. And I had a dream that this was going to happen. I had a dream I was going to stab him in the eye. And I didn't have a dream that I like killed him in a sense, because it didn't, like, that's when I woke up.
Hmm.
But like I had a dream that he was going to come after me and I was going to have to defend myself. And I had this feeling of like death around me, and like because I'm very intuitive. And so I was preparing for this in a sense. And then I love The Walking Dead. And I think that if you watch something so much, it becomes ingrained in you. And so for me, it was like watching The Walking Dead was monkey see, monkey do. And I did exactly like those characters in the series do, like how Andrea like stabbed this one zombie directly in the eyeball. Like I got that right from that one scene. And then going back to, I watched Dexter, and then there was the part about Hannah McKay, who was a serial killer, and she killed this guy, and she had a stab wound in her arm because she didn't hold the knife tight enough and she applied too much pressure. So I knew also to pay attention to that so that I don't injure myself when attacking him. Like I knew that I needed to hold the knife taut so that I wouldn't stab myself. And I knew how to hold the knife, because it's important to learn how to hold a knife correctly, because there's certain ways to work with the knife.
So you did, I mean, you're alive. You did pretty much everything in exactly as should be done in that horrible, horrible situation. Would you have any advice if you could go back in time to yourself back then and say, besides not being there, obviously, I mean, is there anything you wish you would have done a little differently?
Not at all, to be honest. I dropped my dog's leash so that he could run away, and he chose to join me in that attack. And so I didn't have to worry about him in that instance. When I was on my back, that was actually my best benefit for me, because I was able to use my largest muscles. And I've talked to several people in law enforcement, and they said that that was actually my best benefit. And I love to know your perspective on it as well, just because that was the position that saved my life. And I've shared that position to so many people, and I get written that, oh, that position saved me from my attacker too.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, you did a remarkable job, and that is the position you want to be in. Of course, you never want to fall on the ground. You want to stand up if you can. But if
Yeah.
you fall on the ground, absolutely be on your back. Absolutely have your feet up, because then you can spin around if they try and come at you at different directions with your feet up. You can, of course, kick them. So you have that advantage. I train a lot of women who are victims of domestic violence. Obviously, there's a ton of men out there who are sickos, who are wackos. What advice or what words of wisdom, being, you've gone through this horrendous experience, what words of wisdom would you have to women and anybody watching this about being a survivor, about making sure that they can survive in a worst case scenario?
I would say is it's really important to at least have a basis of breath work. Because if you're in this fight and you're getting tired already and you're not knowing how to control your breath, then you're going to lose already because of that. And I did yoga beforehand. Like I got in control of my breath. And because of that breath control, I think that there's many factors for me that helped in my circumstance. Like I think my rain boots were an important factor because I actually had more mass to actually kick him with. And I wasn't wearing a dainty heel, where maybe I would have taken off the dainty heel and got him a different way. But if I was running away in heels, I could have tripped. That would have been my safety concern. And so I think that it's important to do everything you can to run away first, yell, scream, make attention. But then when you can't, fight like hell, scream like hell, do everything you can to fight back. But, I think back to like, I don't remember myself screaming as much because I think it was important for me to control my breath more so.
These days, are you carrying any type of personal protection device, any weapons? Is there anything you believe in? Or you're just like, hey, like you just said, I'm going to fight like hell if, heaven forbid, somebody tries to attack me again?
So, I mean, I would love to get some gun training. I begged my dad to help me do that. But without that knowledge and that safety knowledge of having a gun, I don't feel like that would be to my benefit in any way unless like I actually have that training
I
because
know a guy. I'll help you out.
okay. Okay.
We'll take care of that and make sure you're well trained on firearms. So we got our 320 acre spy ranch where we do a lot of firearms training. So you're definitely going to have to come out.
Yes, I would love that. But like I had a friend, like I used to work on movie sets and
Mhm.
my friend was with Jose Canseco and she was telling me about a story about how he blew off the tip of his finger in the gun.
That's why gun safety is critical. And I will
Yes.
teach you gun safety because, yes, you have to respect the firearm, obviously.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I am good with knives. I don't have them taped up around my house like I used to because I'm not preparing for attack anymore. I am very aware of my surroundings to have that situational awareness. And I honestly don't carry anything because for me, if I were to grab the pepper spray, you have to have it on hand. And for
Mhm.
me, I protect myself without anything. And so I already have that belief in me that I can protect myself. Maybe not against a gun, but I feel like I can always, like, I'll have that response to kick it out or something. But I'll always gauge depending on that scenario because every scenario is different.
Mhm. You did awesome. You did amazing. You're a survivor. I mean, it really, again, besides not being there, you did everything perfect to make sure that you went home. For people that want to get in touch with you, for people that want to talk to you, or I know you have a podcast, what is the best way to contact you?
So the best way to contact me is on Instagram, or if you have a survivor story that you want to share, you just want to like talk about your trauma. I do coaching as well. Just send me an email at the it's survivorsquadpod@gmail.com. So survivorsquadpod@gmail.com.
Got it. Okay. We'll make sure we put that in the video. Tara, thank you for this time. I'm sure this is a very difficult story to share, but I know it's going to benefit a lot of viewers. Guys, do what she did, meaning fight like crazy, never give up, use a weapon if you have to. If there's anything I can do for you, if there's anything Tara can do for you, please let me know. Also subscribe because my goal is just to give you a ton of videos. They're going to make us safer in this crazy and unpredictable world that we live in. So have a wonderful rest of the day and God bless all of you.